The title, Racist Woman Calls Police on Black Teenager and is Speechless When She Finds Out Who His Mother Is, immediately suggests a situation filled with tension, prejudice, and a dramatic twist that flips the power dynamic. At its core, it tells a story about how racism can lead people to act on assumptions, and how those assumptions can collapse when the truth is revealed. It captures a confrontation where ignorance and bias are exposed, and where justice or respect emerges in an unexpected way. The beginning of the story, as hinted by the title, revolves around a black teenager who becomes the target of suspicion. Many times in real life, young black individuals are unfairly judged, stereotyped, or treated as if they are doing something wrong simply because of the color of their skin. The racist woman, in the title, represents this mindset. She chooses to call the police not because of any real danger, but because of her prejudices. This act is powerful because it shows how racism does not always hide in words alone, but often appears in actions like involving law enforcement in situations where it is not justified. The involvement of the police raises the stakes. When the police are called, the situation can become frightening or even dangerous for the teenager, who knows all too well the risks of being unfairly targeted. The teenager in this story is not described as doing anything wrong, which makes the woman's call even more revealing of her prejudice. It is a misuse of authority, a way of weaponizing her bias through the system. Already, the audience feels sympathy for the teen and frustration at the injustice of the woman's decision. The dramatic shift happens when the woman learns who the teenager's mother is. The title does not specify her identity, but the impact is clear. The mother is someone of influence, respect, or authority, someone the woman did not expect. Perhaps she is a judge, a lawyer, a police officer, or a leader in the community. Whoever she is, her presence changes the entire situation instantly. The racist woman, who acted out of superiority and prejudice, suddenly loses her sense of control. She is speechless, shocked by the truth that the person she looked down on is connected to someone powerful. This twist is important because it flips the script. Racism often thrives on the assumption that the victim has no power, no protection, and no voice. But in this case, the teenager is not powerless. His mother's identity becomes a symbol of dignity, strength, and justice. The racist woman, who thought she could control the situation, is left embarrassed and exposed. The audience feels satisfaction at seeing prejudice confronted in such a dramatic way. Beyond the drama, the title carries a deeper message. It reminds us that people should not be judged by appearances, assumptions, or stereotypes. The woman's racism blinded her to the truth, and her actions revealed more about her than about the teenager. It also highlights the importance of family and role models. The mother's role in this story shows how strength, position, and character can shield loved ones from injustice. The teenager, once treated as a suspect, is instead revealed to have roots of respect and honor. The silence of the racist woman at the end of the story is perhaps the most powerful part. Being speechless means she has no defense, no excuse. Her prejudice has been exposed, and the truth leaves her without words. Silence in such a context is not just about embarrassment but also about realization. It forces her and the audience to confront how wrong assumptions can be, and how destructive racism is when it goes unchecked. This story is motivational because it offers hope that injustice does not always win. It shows that even in moments of unfairness, truth can come to light and change the narrative. It also serves as a reminder to stand against racism, to treat people with respect regardless of their background, and to remember that one's worth is not decided by prejudice but by character. The title captures both the ugliness of racism and the beauty of justice, making it a story that resonates with anyone seeking inspiration and truth. The first point centers on how the black teenager faces unfair judgment simply because of assumptions made about him. In the story hinted at by the title, a racist woman decides to call the police, not because the teenager has committed any wrongdoing, but because of how she perceives him through the lens of her prejudice. This reflects a painful reality many young people face, where their character and intentions are overshadowed by stereotypes. Instead of being seen as a normal teenager, perhaps walking, waiting, or going about his day, he is treated as suspicious. That unfair judgment is not based on facts but on bias. Unfair judgment often begins with a quick glance and a rush to assumptions. For the woman, the teenager's skin color becomes the only detail that matters. Instead of asking questions or trying to understand the situation, she jumps to conclusions. By calling the police, she takes her prejudice a step further, attempting to involve authority in reinforcing her false belief. For the teenager, this is more than just an insult. It can be frightening and dangerous. A call to the police can escalate quickly, especially when the person being accused has done nothing wrong. His reality becomes shaped not by his actions but by someone else's unfair lens. The weight of this unfair judgment is heavy. Being treated as guilty before proving innocence strips away dignity. The teenager is put in a position where he has to defend himself against something that was never true in the first place. This can lead to feelings of frustration, fear, and even helplessness. It teaches young people that no matter how good their intentions, some individuals may still see them through distorted stereotypes. That is a painful and exhausting truth to live with, especially for someone who is still young and trying to find their place in the world. What makes this kind of judgment even more damaging is how quickly it escalates. A racist assumption is no longer just a thought in someone's mind, it becomes an action with real consequences. By calling the police, the woman tries to turn her prejudice into a legal matter. This exposes the teenager to the risk of confrontation with law enforcement, which in many real-life situations can be unsafe for people of color. The teenager in this case becomes a target not because of his actions, but because of someone else's ignorance. That unfairness is at the heart of the story. At the same time, the unfair judgment also reveals more about the woman than it does about the teenager. Her decision to act on bias shows her inability to see beyond stereotypes. It reflects fear and ignorance disguised as authority. The teenager himself may be innocent, kind, or simply existing peacefully, but her prejudice blinds her to that reality. This shows how racism works. It shifts blame and suspicion onto the victim while excusing the biased behavior of the one making the judgment. For the teenager, being unfairly judged also creates a moment of resilience. Even though he is wrongfully accused, the truth about him eventually emerges. The title suggests that when the woman learns who his mother is, her assumptions collapse. But before that reveal, the teenager stands as a symbol of how prejudice targets innocence. The unfair judgment becomes a lesson not only for the woman, but also for those who witness the situation. It shows how wrong assumptions can be and how damaging it is to judge people without facts. In a broader sense, this point reflects the everyday experiences of many young people who face discrimination. They are often looked at with suspicion, followed in stores, or questioned for simply existing in spaces where others feel they do not belong. The teenager in the story represents all of those experiences, and the woman's judgment symbolizes the systemic prejudice that exists in society. His story reminds us of the need to look beyond appearances and to treat people with fairness and respect. In the end, the unfair judgment faced by the teenager highlights the pain of being wrongly accused and the danger of acting on prejudice. It demonstrates how harmful racism can be when it influences actions instead of thoughts. It also sets the stage for the twist of the story, where truth dismantles prejudice and the woman is left speechless. This makes the first point not only about injustice, but also about how exposing prejudice reveals the deep flaws in judging others unfairly. Point 2 focuses on how racism is not only an attitude hidden inside someone's mind, but an action that can create real consequences. In the title, the racist woman does not just think negatively about the black teenager. She takes her prejudice further by calling the police. That decision transforms her bias into something far more dangerous. It is no longer just about her personal opinions or assumptions. It becomes an attempt to use authority and power to validate her false judgment. This is how racism often operates in society. It moves from thought to action, from stereotype to systemic harm. When the woman calls the police, she is sending a message that she views the teenager as a threat. Yet nothing in the title suggests that the teenager did anything wrong. His only crime in her eyes is being a young black individual. The act of calling the police is a way for her to put him in a vulnerable position. It shows how racism can take the form of weaponizing systems of authority. Police involvement, especially when unjustified, can escalate quickly and put innocent people at risk. For a teenager, this could be terrifying. It turns an ordinary moment into a potentially life-changing or even dangerous encounter. This type of action reveals the imbalance of power that racism creates.